Have you ever made a promise? Promises are powerful commitments that bind us to our words and actions. They can be as simple as promising to help a friend with their homework, or as significant as vows made on a wedding day. Maybe you promised your best friend you'd always be there for them. Promises build trust and strengthen relationships. God makes promises too, and his promises are unbreakable. God made a big promise to a man named Abram. This promise was not just any promise, it was a covenant, a sacred agreement that would change Abram's life forever. He told Abram to leave his home and travel to a new land. Imagine the courage it took to leave everything familiar behind and step into the unknown. God said, "I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you." Abram believed God. He held on to this promise with unwavering faith. He trusted God would keep his promise. Trusting in something you cannot see is the essence of faith. Even though it was hard, Abram packed his bags. He gathered his belongings, said goodbye to his homeland, and prepared for the journey ahead. He took his wife Sarah and his nephew Lot, and they began their journey. This was not just a physical journey, but a spiritual one as well. This was a big adventure, full of unknowns. Every step they took was a step of faith, trusting in God's promise. But Abram had faith in God. His faith was his guiding light, leading him through the uncertainties and challenges of the journey. The journey wasn't easy. Can you imagine leaving everything you know to go to a new place? That's what Abram and his family did. They traveled for many days, across deserts and rivers. Sometimes they had plenty of food and water. Other times, they were hungry and thirsty. But even when things were tough, Abram and his family never stopped believing God. They remembered his promise. God was going to make them into a great nation. He was going to bless them. And when we remember God's promises, we find strength for the journey. Many years passed. Abram and Sarah grew old. But God's promise still hadn't come true. They still didn't have any children. One day God spoke to Abram again. God reminded Abram of his promise. He said to Abram, "Look up at the stars. That's how many children you will have." Abram and Sarah were amazed. It seemed impossible, but they held on to God's promise. They knew that God could do anything. Finally, when they were very old, something wonderful happened. Sarah gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Isaac. God had kept his promise. Tested by fire. God loved Abraham and Isaac very much. They shared a bond that was deeply rooted in faith and love. Isaac was not just any child, he was the promised son, a miracle born to Abraham and Sarah in their old age. This made Isaac incredibly special to Abraham, but he wanted to know if Abraham trusted him completely. Trust is a cornerstone of faith, and God wanted to test the depth of Abraham's trust. Would Abraham hold anything back from God, even his beloved son? So God gave Abraham a very difficult task. It was a test that would challenge the very core of Abraham's faith and obedience. God asked Abraham to do something that seemed unthinkable. God asked Abraham to take Isaac to a mountain and offer him as a sacrifice. This command must have been heart-wrenching for Abraham. The journey to the mountain was filled with heavy steps and a heavy heart. Can you imagine how hard this must have been for Abraham? The emotional turmoil, the internal conflict, and the sheer weight of the task must have been overwhelming. Yet Abraham pressed on. Isaac was his son, his miracle baby. But Abraham trusted God. He believed that God had a plan, even if he couldn't see it. His faith was unwavering, and his trust in God's goodness was absolute. He knew that God was good and would provide. He obeyed God's command. With a heart full of faith, Abraham built an altar and prepared to sacrifice his beloved son, trusting that God would intervene. Just as Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac, an angel of the Lord stopped him. The angel's voice was clear and firm, a divine intervention that brought relief and joy to Abraham. God provided a ram instead. The ram, caught in a thicket, was a sign of God's provision and mercy. It was a moment of profound relief and gratitude for Abraham. God was so pleased with Abraham's faith. Abraham's willingness to obey, even in the face of such a difficult command, demonstrated his deep trust in God. He blessed Abraham even more. The blessings that followed were a testament to God's faithfulness and Abraham's unwavering trust. Abraham's faith had been tested by fire, and he emerged stronger and more blessed than ever. Jacob's ladder. Isaac grew up and had children of his own, Jacob and Esau. The two brothers were very different from each other. Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man, staying among the tents. Their differences led to many conflicts, but it was Jacob who would have a life-changing experience. One day, Jacob had an amazing dream. He was on a journey, fleeing from his brother Esau, when he stopped to rest for the night. As he slept under the stars, he had a vision that would change his life forever. He dreamed of a ladder reaching all the way from earth to heaven. This ladder was not an ordinary one, it was a divine connection between the earthly realm and the heavenly realm. Angels were going up and down the ladder. These celestial beings were moving between heaven and earth, symbolizing the connection between God and humanity. God spoke to Jacob in the dream. He revealed himself to Jacob and made a profound promise. He told Jacob that he would bless him and his children. This blessing was not just for Jacob but for all his descendants, promising them a prosperous future. God said that he would be with Jacob always. He assured Jacob of his constant presence and protection, no matter where he went. Jacob woke up from his dream feeling amazed. He realized that he had experienced a divine encounter and that the place where he slept was holy. He knew that God was with him. This realization filled him with awe and a sense of purpose. He built an altar to God and promised to serve him. Jacob's dream marked the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one of faith and devotion to God. God keeps his promises. The story of Abraham and his family is a story about faith and God's amazing promises. They faced many challenges, but they never stopped believing God. And God kept his promises to them. He gave them children and blessed them. God makes promises to us too. He promises to love us, to be with us always, and to give us hope for the future. Even when things are tough, we can trust God. He always keeps his promises, just like he did for Abraham and his family. Which part of this journey inspires you most?